Welcome to our fourth and final video with the series on data flow diagrams. In this video, we're going to build a data flow diagram together using the example of Party On Planning Company. And this is a company that basically throws parties for customers, and I have their main business processes listed here. Customers call in, they're interviewed about the event they want to throw a party for, and then they do an estimation, which is part of the party approval process. And then ultimately the party is executed. And so what I've done here is a textual summary of these three main business processes that Party On Planning Company wants an information system to be designed to facilitate. And I've bolded the different roles that we see here, as well as I've done some italicizing of what appears to be kind of the primary data and information that are going to be a part of each of these processes. In order to give me kind of an easy way of mapping inputs and outputs to these primary business processes, I am going to use this table structure that I've created here. And of course, as we've been saying, processes are the main character in a data flow diagram. So it makes sense to start with the process. And processes have data that go into the process that are our informational needs, and then information that is produced as a result of that process. Since a data flow can be input or a data flow can be output, we're going to have this or condition, which will start to make sense as we look at the specific data flows. So for the process of intake, which is the first process that's listed out here, we have an informational need for the intake process, which is a party request. Because this is an input, we're not going to do anything regarding an output. There is an output, however, in the form of interview notes. And as this data flow is going to be an output, we're not going to do anything here for input. What's missing so far is that we don't have sources identified. So the source of the party request as an input is, as we see in the description, customer. When we look at the output of interview notes, that actually has a destination of the next process, which is the approval process. I've used the convention of underlining the processes and bolding the actors just so it's a little bit clearer when we go into actually creating the data flow diagrams. So the party approval process as our next process has as an input interview notes. And that came from the process of intake. So we're going to block out any sort of output for this. Looking at our process description again, there's an output of cost estimate, and that has a destination of caretaker, which is one of our actors, which is why I've bolded it. And as we go through approval, there is another input that is from the source of customer, and that input is decision. There is an output in the form of finalized detail, and that is a part of our next process, which is party execution. So as the final output we have mapped here for approval execution, that is going to be an input, which comes from the approval process for execution. So I've included that here as well. There is also an input in the form of allocated resources. Our description indicates that the source of that is caretaker. Execution also has an output in the form of role assignment, and the destination for that is detail expert. Party report as an output has a destination of caretaker. And finally, Invoice is an output that has a destination of customer. So now that I've mapped out our data flows using these process descriptions, what you don't see here are data stores. And that's because, as a rule of thumb, data stores are used when data is stored as output from one process to then be used later as input for another process. So that isn't captured here, but now that I have those primary inputs and outputs, it's relatively easy to create my data flow diagram. I did a little bit of refinement when it came to some of the labels and terms that were associated with them, but this is a faithful data flow diagram, a level 0 data flow diagram for the mapping that I did. And typically it's helpful to start with your level 0 diagram because you're showing those highest level business processes. And from there, it's pretty easy to move to a context level diagram. If you look at the context level diagram for the party management system, you will notice that the inputs and outputs, the data flows to and from the actors are exactly the same data flows that you see to and from the actors in our level 0 diagram. That is, they're balanced. I've also created here a level 1 diagram by exploding process 2. You'll see that the data flows that are going out seemingly to nothing and coming in from seemingly nothing for the sub processes are balanced to the inputs and outputs that were shown in our level 0 diagram for process 2. Now, the particulars of our level 1 sub processes that are shown here come from and are faithful to the process description for party execution. On a final note, as we look at a context level diagram, our level 0 diagram, and a level 1 diagram for this example, it kind of seems like to some extent I was just doing some magic or making up some details. In practice, we want to remember kind of where we started, that data flow diagramming is part of the analysis phase of the system development lifecycle, which also includes requirement engineering. That is, when we're doing this for real, we're not just making it up or giving it our best guess. Our diagramming is deeply informed. It is derived directly from the information, the data that we've collected through requirements engineering, through interviewing people, through perhaps surveying people, from conducting observations in the workplace. We don't just make these things up, but we can write out descriptions of the processes in order to capture first how the existing system works. That is, the processes and the inputs needed for them and the outputs produced as a result of them, as well as we can then revise these, again, informed through requirements engineering to show what the system should do. And with that, we are at the official end of the series of videos on data flow diagramming. You should now have a better understanding about what exactly we're trying to capture in a data flow diagram, as well as how to create one.